First, let's in fact take a look at what the German Chancellor had to say in Munich.
In der Ära der Großmächte ist unsere Freiheit nicht mehr einfach so gegeben. Sie ist gefährdet. Wir halten uns dabei an unsere rechtlichen Verpflichtungen. Wir denken dies strikt eingebettet in unsere nukleare Teilhabe innerhalb der NATO. Und wir werden in Europa keine Zonen unterschiedlicher Sicherheit.
We move on now and back over to the US, where a story is developing once again. And in a recent televised interview, White House border czar Tom Homan confirmed that the large-scale federal immigration surge in Minnesota is ending. But enforcement operations will not stop. Homan said Operation Metro Surge, a massive ICE-led immigration enforcement deployment in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, is being wound down with a significant drawdown already underway and expected to continue into next week. Despite the pullback of Surge Pacific personnel, Homan made it clear that ICE will maintain a presence in Minnesota and could return with additional resources if conditions change. Federal agents assigned to ongoing criminal and fraud investigations will remain until their work is complete. Homan said the surge met its objectives, making Minnesota less of a sanctuary for state criminals, and pointed to improved cooperation with local jails in harbouring ICE detainees as a key factor in drawn resources. Alison Mutler joins us once again to discuss the ongoing situation in Minnesota. Alison, the border czar there, Tom Homan, claiming that ICE isn't leaving Minnesota, but indeed things have changed, kind of pitching it as ICE has achieved its goal there, and is also saying that he will be prepared for more agents to go back in if situations, quote unquote, worsen. Looking now at this entire operation over the past around 2 months, how do you think this has impacted Donald Trump?
Well, it's what the border czar Tom Homan is saying is basically they're saving face, because the whole problem with this operation, it was very heavy-handed. There were deaths of protesters, and there were kind of armed ICE officers on the street, and it's impacted Donald Trump quite badly. And there are midterm elections later this year in the autumn, and I think Donald Trump realized that this heavy-handed approach, the violence on the street, the deaths on the street, was harming his popularity, which again then would translate into votes in the midterm elections. So it seems to me that this withdrawal, which tactical withdrawal for political reasons, but they are trying to save face to say we've achieved our objectives. That's just because it's not politically expedient, it's not politically advantageous for ICE to stay there and to continue the way they have continued so far with armed officers on the streets and arresting people and violence and deaths. It was costing Donald Trump politically, his administration.
And leading into the midterms, of course, there are much fears for the Republicans, with polls when it comes to that not looking very good for the GOP. Given Donald Trump's broader immigration crackdown, not just focusing on Minneapolis, how do you think that the American people have received it? Of course, it's been focused on Democratic-run cities. You have the likes of Los Angeles, Illinois, others as well, with talks of ICE going into further Democratic-run cities, Chicago, New York, places like that. How has Donald Trump's ICE crackdown been pitted to the public?
Well, I think it's mixed. He has his hardcore MAGA base, who whatever he does will still support him. But then you have people, the floating voters. I'm not even talking about people who are opposed to Donald Trump. And they will have seen, it's quite clear that these ICE agents are being sent into, as you said, these democratic cities, cities that are controlled by the Democratic Party, i.e. the rivals of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. So although immigration, a lot of people would have agreed that immigration has been a problem in the United States in recent years, the way that Donald Trump has gone about it, both in the ferocity of the operations, but also sort of picking out states which he considers his enemies, I don't think has earned him, particularly amongst floating voters or people who aren't his hardcore fans. I think it has cost him quite a lot. And particularly with the midterm, as you said, elections coming up, he'll be concerned with that. That's why I think he stopped the Minnesota raids now, because we have quite a few months before elections, and he'll be hoping that there'll be economic good news and that people, by the time the midterm elections come around, let's just say October or November, people will have forgotten about it and it won't cost him as many votes. But obviously that depends what happens where else he deploys his troops, the federal troops. But it really, I think, basically overall, what happened in Minnesota with ICE did cost the Republican Party and did cost Donald Trump.
Alison, do stay with us one final time as we move over to another US update. And the government has